and menopause, and you want to get in the best shape of your life this year, you have to follow the WB4 method.
To exercise, to lose weight. A lot of us have been given a lot of false information. Many of you are not healthy enough to actually exercise.
Weights and doing strength training when we're in our 50s, we are not going to have an optimal later decade of life. I'll just tell you that's pretty much 100% the case.
The root cause.
The root of the problem. Get to the root of the problem.
Root cause.
Hey friend, Heather Creekmore here. You will not believe what I did. I clicked on them. All of them. Every single one of those videos that came by in my Facebook feed or my Instagram feed that told me it had the formula to get to the root cause, to find out why I have thyroid issues or autoimmune issues or trouble losing weight in perimenopause or all the things, because there is a video for each thing that you could be facing. And so I clicked like a wild woman and I watched several master classes. And what I found was pretty interesting. Just, I'll let the cat out of the bag here. Pretty much they weren't all the same. So they all had the answer, the exclusive answer. And most of these answers, frankly, weren't for free. I was supposed to watch the masterclass and then sign up for their program, of course. But their answers, even in what they showed me for free, didn't agree. No wonder our health is so complicated. So over the next 2 days, 2 shows, I'm going to show you a little bit about what I learned and hopefully encourage you that there is a better way to be healthy than to try to do all of the recommendations that we hear from internet influencers. In fact, trying to do everything we hear from internet influencers may make us crazy. Now, that's not to say some of them don't have great recommendations and we can't benefit from some of their suggestions. Of course we can. We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But oh boy, friends, especially if you have an eating disorder background, there's a lot here that could really complicate things. But hey, I'm glad you're here. If you're brand new to the show, hey, go to improvedbodyimage.com and you can find the best episodes to start with if this all is brand new to you. Now let's get to today's show. Welcome to Compared to Who, the podcast to help you make peace with your body so you can savor God's rest and feel His love. If you're tired of fighting body image the world's way, Compared to Who is the show for you. You've likely heard lots of talk about loving your body, but my goal is different. Striving to fall in love with stretch marks and cellulite is a little silly to me. Instead, I want to encourage you and remind you with the truth of Scripture that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved no matter what your size or shape. Here, the pressure is off. If you're looking for real talk, biblical encouragement, and regular reminders that God loves you and you're not alone, you've come to the right place. I hope you enjoy today's show, and hey, tell a friend about it. Okay, are you ready for it? Let me start today by telling you my data set. And I'm not going to be too specific, and I'm not going to tell you who these exact doctors were or what these exact programs were. And that's for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to trigger anyone who may have used these programs in the past, but also I don't want to get sued. And some of the things I'm going to mention are the proprietary thoughts or concepts from these doctors. So I think it's safer if I just talk about them in more general terms and then no one gets too upset. So here's what I'm working from. I watched a chiropractor's masterclass, and it was supposed to be 3 days and it ended up being 7 days, and I watched them all. I watched an hour-long masterclass, and generically it was on embracing wellness, and it was taught by a functional medicine doctor. I watched another hour-long masterclass, and it was generally titled something like weight loss and improving health. That was also taught by a functional doctor. And then I watched an hour-long masterclass on becoming your best, fittest self, like healing all the middle-age things. And that was taught by someone who, best I could tell, her qualification was she was a personal trainer. I'm also going to consider in this conversation 2 different doctors that I follow via email. One doctor is, I would say, a thyroid specialist. And the other doctor is a kind of a natural health doctor. I think one of the taglines is they want you to take control of your health. And so I get emails from that doctor as well a few times a week. Now, let me just start by explaining this overall thought, maybe feeling that I had as I went into this endeavor. And maybe this will answer a question or two maybe you've had come up as you've heard the show or thought about concepts like intuitive eating. So first things first, I do believe that there are things we can and maybe should do to take care of our bodies. There are certain things that are good for our bodies, and there are certain things that are not as good for our bodies, and I believe that. I also believe that the body does have some natural ability to heal itself. And I believe that there are ways that we can do natural interventions that may help the body heal. That said, an overall thought or feeling I had after watching and reading all this material is that my healing is up to me. Maybe even beyond that, I felt like it's my responsibility to make sure I do everything possible that I can do to have optimal health. And if I don't do everything that I can do to have optimal health, I'm just securing my fate as someone who will be debilitated by disease in the next 20 or 30 years. It felt like a lot of pressure, and more so, it felt like some fear mongering at some level, right? One of the doctors that I watched said she proclaimed she was living till 120. And I decided I would do a little Googling around that. And there are currently 27 people alive on the planet that were born in the 1910s. And so that would mean they're between 100 and 114 years old. I could not find a number of people that had made it to 120, but I think the number is really, really low. But the philosophy here, I think the tone under that statement was that she has complete control over how long she lives because she's learned how to do everything right. She's learned how to play by all these certain food and health rules, and then she's going to get this guaranteed outcome of 120 years. But then I go back to the Bible, and we know from Scripture that only God knows how long we're going to live. He actually knows how many days we have. Job 14:5 says, since his days are determined, the number of his months is in you, and his limits you have set so that he cannot pass. God already knows how long you and I are going to live. Psalm 139:16, your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. Before you were born, God knew how many days you had to be on this earth. And then beyond that, biblically, as I watched class after class and heard sentiment after sentiment of eat this way, exercise this way, do these things, or else you will get these disease. And again, that fear welled up in me. I think of Matthew 6:27. And who of you, by being worried, can add a single hour to his life? Right? So where's the line between worrying and taking care of, right? And I think that's where the pursuit of optimal health gets so tricky, because of course we want to be good stewards of our bodies. Of course we want to engage in behaviors that help our bodies feel good and run well, but we cannot operate under the belief that we have complete control. I mean, who among us can truly make your thyroid run better? Who can tell their pancreas to get it right with the insulin? Who can tell their brain to stop degenerating? I mean, we can take the supplements and we can do the behaviors, but we do not have a guarantee, an absolute guarantee that they will work, because our bodies are not machines. So even if it worked for someone else, we don't have the exact same genetics or even epigenetics, which is kind of an up and coming field, talking about how gene expression gets changed through trauma and trauma that passes down through generations. Like, we've got all these different complexities inside our bodies that may make one thing work for someone and not work for you. And the problem here is that if we do all the things because we are promised an outcome, boy, does it feel really frustrating or defeating if someone promised you an outcome and you did all the hard work to get to that outcome and it doesn't work for you. I mean, we've all done it in some way, shape, or form. It makes us feel like we're flawed or messed up. Or maybe you were able to do really well at X and Y, and you were supposed to do X, Y, Z, and you forgot Z, and now suddenly it's like, oh goodness, I gave myself diabetes or an autoimmune disease, and it's all on me, and I did this to myself. And wow, we can beat ourselves up over that. And the underlying premise, again, is that I had complete control. Dr. Sanjay Gupta has a CNN podcast called Chasing Life. And the last couple of months, they've been talking all about weight and the weight loss drugs and body positivity and body neutrality and, you know, really just a lot of the same topics that we've been talking about on this show have been covered in this CNN series, which has been really fascinating. But there's one episode where Dr. Gupta talks to a Dr. Christopher Gardner, who's been a professor at Stanford who studied nutrition. And he makes this statement that they can study people on diets. And I'm generalizing a little bit, but he says, and one person will lose 50 pounds on the diet, and another person doing the exact same diet will gain 20 pounds. And that's why this is so complicated. I'll be right back with what I learned after this quick commercial break. The underlying premise, again, is that I had complete control. And I don't think that's a healthy perspective for us, mentally or spiritually. We're not promised anything about our bodies in the Bible except for that they're wasting away, 2 Corinthians 4:16. Because of sin in this fallen world, our bodies have issues. Parts fail. Systems struggle. There's a reason why not many people live to 100. Just to be a real upper, you have a 100% chance of dying. No other option. Yikes. Now that you're all encouraged and uplifted, let's try to get to the fun stuff. So as Christians, how do we filter all these messages? Is this what it means to be a good steward of my body, that I spend a decent part of my life trying to preserve my body and to keep it disease-free and to make sure that I'm doing all the things so that I can live as long as possible? Like, I feel like that's out of balance. From a really practical standpoint, I think about the recommendations that I heard, and I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of this in a little bit, but the recommendations I heard around food. And I think if you try to stick to those recommendations I heard about food in a very precise, perfectionistic way, I think you would end up with an eating disorder that's not in the manual yet, but that's coming up all over the place, which is orthorexia. So orthorexia, if you're not familiar with it, is just this commitment, obsession to only eating clean. And although maybe a little part of you, especially if you've got an eating disorder background like I do, maybe a little part of you is like, ooh, I kind of wish I had that. Like, ooh, I kind of wish I could do that. I kind of wish I could be like that. I kind of wish that I was never tempted to eat dessert. Like, yeah, you think that now. But the truth is, orthorexia is no fun at all. It causes stress and anxiety and depression, and you don't have the ability to relate to people and normal situations in a normal way because you are worrying so much about the food and what you'll be able to eat. And it's not a healthy state, my friend. You might be eating healthy foods, but it's not a healthy state for you to be in, probably physically, but definitely mentally or spiritually. And beyond that, I know friends that have been near orthorexic and ended up with a cancer diagnosis, right? The woman who never ate Oreo and then still got a disease that she wasn't supposed to get from eating so clean. I have another friend that just shared with me about a woman she knew who she was sure she did everything right when it came to food and exercise, and she died of colon cancer in her early 40s. Like, how do we reconcile that? If just eating the way these doctors tell me to eat in these master classes is supposed to guarantee me some degree of health, how do we reconcile it when another diagnosis comes in and kind of interrupts everything? It's suddenly real that it wasn't all up to me and my food choices. So again, where's the line between being responsible and taking care of your health and being obsessive and giving yourself an eating disorder? And I think it's really tricky to find that line. And I think it has to, like everything else we do as Christians, as followers of Jesus, it has to go back to our hearts. And so I think about the scripture in Matthew 16:25. It says, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. So as we get started looking through like all the different recommendations, and as I share kind of what I learned watching all these different master classes, I want you to keep this in mind. If my goal to improve my health is to save my life, if it's because I think doing all these things right is going to save me, oh, that's a false kind of salvation, right? My hope has to be in Christ alone. You know, John 12:25, those who love their life in this world will lose it. Those who care nothing for their life in this world will keep it for eternity. I cannot be on a full-time quest to fix my body or to fix my health. I just can't be. That's not why I'm here. And oh boy, does it get fuzzy for those of us with eating disorder or disordered eating background. Because for me, I'll just speak for myself. Once I start to hear some of these rules about how I could get healthier, oh boy, do I latch onto them. It's like, yeah, sure, tell me, ooh. And then I start dreaming, y'all. I start fantasizing like, oh, if I just do this, this, and this, if I could just do this perfectly, then my body would look like this. And then I would feel like this. And I go into this fantasy world of how fantastic things will be if I can just get my act together, quote unquote, act together with my food and my exercise. And I find myself in like right back to the pattern that I had when I was dieting all the time, right? And though this time it might not just be about weight and size, it might be about health. It's the same temptation. It's the same idol. It's the same dream. It's the same promise of a false salvation that if I could just get optimally healthy, then I would never struggle again. And it's just not true. There's a lot of struggle in this life. No matter what we do, we're not promised a life free of struggle. So with that all as the precursor, let me dig into what I found in these programs. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the science. Oh boy, the science. So every doctor had slightly different explanations for how the body works and what the quote unquote real problem or quote unquote root problem is in the body. Each class explained what was happening in the body with like diagrams and visuals and video and what the real problem is and how everyone else is missing it. And I thought this was kind of funny because they were all a little different. Like there was some overlap between some for sure, but there was some science mumbo jumbo in each of them where you really wanted to trust it. It's like, wow, okay, that makes sense. Like that sounds reasonable to me. But then two of the doctors in particular were just like, no one else has discovered this. And I went to medical school or, I went and got my functional medicine license because I felt like every other doctor in the world was getting this wrong and I wanted to get it right. And so I went and learned about it so I could get it right. And now I'm kind of the only person that has the right solution. And when you listen to them, they're very convincing. And no one says like, hey, this is just what I think. They all have like science to back it up, which is fascinating too, right? Like I mentioned in the podcast a couple months ago, there were scientific studies to back up the low carb diet idea, but they were interpreted wrongly, according to this book I referenced. It's called Low Carb Fraud. But it was a journalist who interpreted the data in such a way that made it tell the story that he wanted to tell so that he could write a book about it and sell the books. And now because of that, because of those interpretations of the study 20 years later, like this is probably what your doctor's telling you to do. Cut out carbs if you want to lose weight and get healthy. But the science behind it all wasn't good to begin with. So science gets really fuzzy, right? And then, I don't have any problem with science. I like science. I think it's amazing. I think God made science. But as I take kind of what do they say, like a 30,000, foot view, like when you really back away from it and look at it, it's like, what are the statistical odds that this one doctor out of, I don't know how many tens of thousands of doctors there are in this world, maybe hundreds of thousands, this one doctor found something that no one else has found ever, and their program is the only one that works. Is that reasonable? And I think that plays to the same thing we've talked about in diet world, right? It's like the one diet plan that has found this one key, this one nutrient, this one special way to eat that no one else has found. And they promise you something special, something exclusive, membership to an exclusive club. Sounds a little like a cult to me, but they promise you something that no one else anywhere has. And once you get in, once you have it, then wow, things are going to unlock for you. In fact, this book that I read from a few months ago on this show was a book written by an Anglican priest, and it's called Health, Money, and Love and Why We Don't Enjoy Them. And he talks about this very thing, and it was written in the 1980s. He talks about this, how this happens with food all the time. Our food religion is constantly changing, and we are so willing to be all in. Like, I totally believe that carbohydrates are bad, or I totally believe, for those of us that were alive in the 90s, that fat is bad and I must eat low fat, until someone tells us another way to eat. And then we quickly give up the old rules and we go all in with the new. It's like, is that really what we believe? Like, what is going on there? Why do we put so much faith into these food rules, these systems? And then in the case of these master classes that I'm talking about, why do we put so much faith in this one random person that's really good at social media marketing? Like, yeah, maybe they're legit, but do they deserve as much faith as they're asking of us and as we put into them? I don't think so. Let's go on. So the second thing that I want to compare here are the variables. Okay, science, that's a big science word, right? In science, you're only supposed to have one variable so that you can actually see what's working. But the variables between these different classes were just hilarious. Okay, so the one class I think I mentioned briefly, it was supposed to be for 3 nights, and then they just kept adding bonus nights. And so I think it ended up being 7 nights total. And I had to watch all of them because they kept saying that food was going to be the next one, and they pushed that off. And so food wasn't until like the 7th one. Most of them, all 4 of these classes, did have some conversations around mold and toxins and environmental factors that are contributing to disease. And so, that made sense to me. And they all kind of seem to agree somewhat on that. Maybe they had different places that they prioritize that in terms of getting healthy or fixing your thyroid or autoimmune diseases. But that was on there for all. And I think there's helpful things to be aware of there. Like, if you have mold in your home, like I know that's not good for you. I had my mercury fillings removed a few years ago because I had heard that mercury fillings, could be affecting my health and my thyroid health. And my fillings were old anyway. So I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead. And they wanted to take them out. I'm like, let's get them out. And then if it helps, it helps. But when it came right down to the recommendations of what you needed to do to get healthy, that's where it got interesting. That's where the variables got a little crazy. Now, in full disclosure, all of these master classes want you to buy something. Like the master class is just your teaser. They want you to buy their full program or like work with them directly, right? So they don't give away all the information in the master class. But just a little bit of information I gleaned. One of the doctors said you have to eat like the second you get up, like within 30 minutes of waking up, you need to be eating, even if you take thyroid medication, because anyone who takes thyroid medication knows we're normally told to wait an hour. But it was like, no, you know, within a half hour, you need to be eating. And then the other doctor was like, here's what you need to do. You need to wake up and you need to spend time in, you know, prayer and meditation. And then you need to exercise. And, you know, and so according to that doctor's optimal schedule, you weren't eating for like 2 hours. So it's like, okay, which do I do? Was it 2 hours or within the first half hour? And they were both making recommendations that were supposed to be good for someone with thyroid issues, right? They're solving my thyroid problem. Another doctor said you should only eat 4 times a day, right? 4 times a day, period. That's all you eat. Another one said you should graze all day long and never go like more than an hour and a half, 2 hours without food. So you never let your blood sugar drop. Another said you should be intermittent fasting. And I guess that recommendation was made before the American Heart Association study came out saying that intermittent fasting can lead to heart disease. So I don't know. I don't know if that was an outdated masterclass or not. One doctor, when it came to exercise, said that I needed to only do gentle cardio and I should keep my walking heart rate. And I was only supposed to do gentle cardio, I think 2 times a week. And keep my walking heart rate to 110. Now, that was specific to me because she had this formula where you take, it's like 180 minus your age and then minus like 10 points if you're on 2 medications and all these things. And from working in fitness, I know that there are heart rate formulas that we follow, but hers was lower than anything I'd heard before. And so that was kind of interesting. But then another doctor said I should be doing HIIT workouts, which let me tell you, friend, if I'm doing high intensity, like interval training workouts, my heart rate going to be way over 110. Like it's going to be like 160. So then another one said I shouldn't do any cardio at all. I should never do cardio, only weightlifting. Now they did all agree that we need to be doing strength training, that weightlifting, resistance training was important. So at least they agreed on that. But which one is right? Like the challenge with this is they all phrase their recommendations in such a way where you feel like if you don't do it their way, if you are not doing it their way, well, then of course you're not going to get these results that they're promising you. Of course you're going to give yourself the disease you're trying to avoid because you need to exercise exactly like this. Remember, they're the special doctor that figured out the special formula that no one else has figured out. And so you have to do it exactly their way. And the message underneath that is it's all on you. Their rules are what's most important. Do it exactly right. And friend, it's the path to optimal health goes right back to being the same path we were on when we were dieting. Isn't it the same? It's right back to being given this unreasonable set of things that you have to do. And they are trying to white knuckle it, do them all or else, you will fail. And this time the failure is not just you're not going to lose the weight. This time the failure is you're going to get a disease and you will die. Oh man, the pressure. There was one other variable that I noticed. And it sounds maybe a little positive. I don't know. I'm trying to make this as positive as possible. But most of the doctors, they did advertise their program as a weight loss program, but most of the doctors didn't focus on that. There's some promised weight loss after following their program. A few of them pointed out that we're just too advanced now to believe that weight and weight loss means what we've been told it means, and that no one should be just looking at weight. In 2024, it's really more about body composition and having enough muscle, and it's really not about weight anymore. So there wasn't a direct nod to throwing away your scale, But I did appreciate the fact that most of the doctors weren't talking about weight-related results. But instead, they were talking about health disease prevention results, which in some ways, pardon the pun here, could be weightier than just weight results, right? Instead of taking the pressure off around the weight, maybe they've added even more pressure because now it's all about preventing death. Yikes. Okay, third topic here, the food. So in fairness, like I said, most of these masterclasses wouldn't disclose their precise diets because they want you to buy their program. I spent $30 for one. That was like my budget. I was like, okay, I can do $30. And I got it and I was not impressed at all. I was like, oh, please, like this is nothing new. You could find all these recipes on the internet. It felt like a Weight Watchers or any other influencer's healthy eating plan. I mean, it had more food in it than maybe like a super restrictive plan, but there was nothing new there. We're out of time for today, but next time I'm going to take you through their food plans. Oh, there's going to be a trigger alert in it. So if you're triggered hearing about food stuff, you can skip a certain part, but there was some interesting stuff there. So we'll dig into that and then talk a little bit more next time just about whether or not it is our responsibility to follow these plans when they're presented to us because they seem like they will help us steward our health better, and how we discern between a helpful plan and maybe a plan that's not so helpful. I'm going to give you kind of 5 things to look for there. So come back next time as we continue this important conversation, because I know, friend, I know you're seeing those master classes too. I know they're coming by your Facebook. So find out how to be discerning and wise, because we all do want to be healthy. We all want to take care of our bodies. So we'll talk more about that next time. I hope you'll come back. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. And the Compared To Show is proud to be part of the Life Audio Podcast Network. For great Christian podcasts, go to lifeaudio.com.